Hello everyone, welcome to a new video in React Basics series. As part of this series, we are building the food search application, and so far, we are able to build the application with search functionality using which you can search any kind of food item. So as part of this particular video, I intend to cover one of the very important hooks in React, which is called useEffect, and the API calls that we did earlier using the handle search. Basically, we will be using useEffect for triggering those API calls. Also, if you are new to the channel, I would suggest you to go and check my entire playlist on the food search application. You can go and check this food search playlist where I have already uploaded around 5 videos. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, open VS Code, and if you have followed so far, you will have the handle search implemented with a fetch call, where we are basically creating a search URL, and using that search URL we are trying to fetch the food data based on the search text. And search text is nothing but whatever you are typing in the search input is what is stored in the search text. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to get rid of this fetch call happening here inside the handle search, and we'll move it to the use effect hook. So before doing that, let's try to understand what exactly is use effect hook. So for that, I will quickly take you to the React documentation. So as you can see, use effect hook is basically used for synchronizing the component with external system, and in cases like if we want to fetch the data, we can do that as well using the use effect. And use effect hook has two arguments. The first is like setup, and it is a function, and then you need to provide a list of dependencies, which is like a optional argument here, and you can choose to pass it or not. And based on what how you are if you are not passing the dependencies, the behavior for the use effect hook will be different. So let's quickly go over those mm, changes based on the dependencies, because it is very important to understand that as well. uh, so there are three basic use cases, like passing a dependency array. So this is like a very basic use case where, like, in general you will be passing certain dependencies, right? And by dependencies, what I mean is like whatever state variables you have in your component. So in our case, for example, we have search text, right? So this could be a dependency for use effect, because whenever you update the search text, the effect setup method will get triggered. So in this case, based on the dependencies, use effect setup function will be triggered. The other use case is when we are passing an empty dependency array. So in case of empty dependency array, uh, your effect truly does not use any reactive values, and it will basically only run after the initial render, which means the first time when your rendering happens, right? At that point itself, only once your setup function will be triggered. The third case is passing no dependency array at all. So in this case, the behavior is again a bit different. So if you pass no dependency array at all, in that case, your use effect runs after every single render and re-render of your component, which means like every time whenever re-rendering happens due to some state variable change or any reactive variable change, every time your use effect hook will be triggered. So for example, let's say if there is a change in search text or food item, even though it is not given in the dependency array, but your use effect will still get triggered. Okay, so with that, I think I have covered all the basics related to use effect hook, and these are like very important even for interviews as well. So I would highly recommend you to go through these. I will attach the React documentation link in the video description, so that you can easily go through and try to understand these points. Okay, Let's move on to the coding part now. So the first thing that we want to do is add a use effect hook. So for that, uh, type use effect. So this is the hook that we want to use. Now the first is the setup function that you need to write inside use effect. So this is the setup function, and then we need to provide a dependencies array, right? So this is how it would look. Now once you have this use effect, and make sure it gets imported at the top, right? So you should have this use effect imported as well. So once you have use effect, then uh, in our case, because whenever you are typing anything in the search box, this search text state variable gets updated, right? But in case of use effect, we don't want to basically trigger the setup function every time you type something. What that means is, like, whenever you go to the application, and let's say if I'm typing, I want to type salad a. So whenever I type even a single character, it will try to trigger the use effect, because there is a change in the state variable. So uh, for that reason, to avoid that kind of a behavior, unnecessary re-render, I would just choose to have a separate state variable, which I will be updating only once user clicks on this search button. So at this point, our assumption is, whenever you type something here, right, like salad, and click on the search button, that is the point in time when you want to trigger the search API. Otherwise, if you keep on triggering it every time, it will be very expensive, and it is not a good way to basically do the API calls. Okay, so let's go back and see. Let's add a new state variable, const. Let's call it search query, and set search query, so which is setter method. Then add the use state. So basically, this search query will store the search text state variable value whenever you click on this search button. Okay, and we want to add this search query state variable in the dependency array. So this is our dependency array. Now in the setup, we need to do we need to write the API call, right? And there is one more minor change we need to do is in this handle search as well. So in this case, this entire functionality will be moved out from here, and it will be put in the use effect, right? Because we want to trigger the API call inside use effect, so that's why I moved it out. And in the handle search, basically what we will do is we will update the search query. So let's do that. Set search query, and here I wanna set the current value of search text. So whatever you have typed in the input box, basically we are setting the final value to the search query, and that is what will be used in the search URL as well. So let's update that. Search query. Okay, so with this we have our use effect ready. One more minor edge case that we need to handle here is, like, there are certain cases when you will run into race condition, where uh, like, let's say there are multiple changes in the search query, like user does the change and quickly clicks on the search button. So there is a possibility, if this particular call takes more time, in that case you will end up triggering multiple calls. And if the previous call gets resolved, and we get the data for previous call, basically we will end up setting the food items, which is like the previous search value. That is something we don't want to do. And if you want to understand more about this race condition that I'm talking about, you can go and read here. So this is where they have explained how the data fetch should be happening, and to avoid the race conditions, basically we can use a ignore variable here. You can name it anything, but in the example it is ignore. So what it does, it whenever like uh, a re-render happens, basically this cleanup will run. So this is used for cleanup. Now this is one of new points in the use effect hook that you need to understand. So inside the setup, whatever you write, that gets executed every time basically the setup runs, and then at the end you can choose to return some a function, and this function is called as a cleanup function. So inside cleanup, if you whatever cleanups you want to do, for example, uh, if you want to close a chat room in case of a chat example, so those kind of things can be done inside here. If you want to close a connection, those kind of things. So in our case, to avoid the race condition, we can use how they have used. Similarly, we can use the ignore variable and to do the cleanup so that we don't run into the race conditions. So let's go back and add a variable at top. Let okay, let ignore is equal to false. So initially we want to basically do set the food items. So let's use if not ignore. So basically if it is set to false, in that case only we will be setting the data. Okay, otherwise basically we will skip setting the data. Okay, and in the cleanup, basically cleanup part, so let's see where this ends. Okay, this is ending here. So from here we can return a cleanup function, and what it will do is it will basically uh, set the ignore to true, which means uh, like whenever there is a race condition, basically this part will be ignored, due to which we will not get outdated data in our uh, app UI. So that's all like we need to do in order to move the basically API call to use effect. Let's go back and see in our app if it is working properly. So let's clear this, and as you can see there are some food items loaded by default, and if you go to network call we can quickly check that. So if you look at this last network call and see how it went. So here you can see there are 25 food items that we have received, and in the search query basically we are not passing anything. So in the so basically the setup part ran once whenever this rendering happened, this ran once, and at that time we had nothing in the search query. So basically it just queried with the empty search query, and that's why we got these random results here. But let's try to do a proper call now. So let's go to the input and try to search for some food item like salad, and click on search. So as you can see, once I typed salad and clicked on search, I got the search result, and 5 items are there, and all of them are rendered here. Let's search for chicken. Okay, everything seems to be working perfectly fine. So that's all I wanted to cover as part of this video. I hope you learned something new about the use effect hook. I would highly encourage you to like the video if it is useful for you. Also share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon.